North Korea doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to kindness and prosperity, and Kim Jong-un's 2020 order to confiscate and kill all pet dogs in Pyongyang is no exception. At the time, the communist dictator referred to man's best friend as Western decadence and a tainted trend within the bourgeoisie ideology. Now, 4 years on from the original order, the North Korean government is trying again to round up everyone's furry friends. Last week, the government said, and I quote, "Treating a dog as a family member who eats and sleeps with the family is incompatible with the socialist lifestyle and should be strictly avoided. The practice of dressing up dogs as if they were humans, putting pretty ribbons in their hair, wrapping them in a blanket and burying them when they die is a bourgeoisie activity. It's one of the ways wealthy people waste money in a capitalist society." Now that's really interesting. Wasting money is another way of saying that people in capitalist societies have surplus money to do with as they please. A dangerous idea for a starving communist nation. In communism, poverty represents devotion to the state. If you have something to spare, you obviously haven't given enough. Now, said North Korea's government, and I quote, "Dogs are basically meat that's raised outside in accordance with their nature and then eaten when they die. Therefore, such behaviour is totally unsocialist and must be strictly eliminated." Now, this cruelty is backfiring on the regime, with people asking, what should I do with my dog that I love so much? I can't just kill it, I can't just abandon it. Meanwhile, the executive director of the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, which is an unenviable job if ever there was one, said, and I quote, "The Kim regime criminalises normal behaviour, including visiting a relative in a neighbouring village without a travel permit, crossing the border without regime approval, or possessing a religious book. The ongoing crackdown on pet dog ownership as non-socialist behaviour is an attempt to break the multi-millennial human-canine bond by ideological degree. It is the epitome of ludicrous indoctrination." Now, this is very interesting as a reflection on the communist mindset and the behaviour of nervous dictatorial governments. But before we get to the exciting, get too excited about the fact that we're living in a free world, the eco-fascist movement has started to lean toward a very North Korean view of the world. Yes, after they have taken away your car and forced you to start eating bugs, the net zero climate warriors are coming for your pets. Just look at some of these examples. Euronews ran the headline in 2021 that read, "What's worse for the climate crisis, your child or your pet?" It was subtitled, "Research shows a way to bring down carbon emissions is to limit family members and forego pet ownership." Now, they quote that both owning a pet and having a child can increase your carbon footprint in different ways, but which one is worse? Now, the article asks this as if that is an appropriate way to discuss pets and children. They also say that we should go green by keeping your family lean. It advises, referencing a 2017 study, that equates a child to 58 tonnes of CO2 for each year of the parent's life. And it says, in the long term, we found that there's a big climate impact from creating a new person. Now, that was a quote from the sustainability scientist Professor Kimberly Nicholas at Lund University. The Independent also ran an article titled, and I quote, "By owning a pet, you are doing more damage to the environment than you might realise." It goes on to say that owning a pet can emit double the carbon emissions of a family's electricity use, and further refers to it as a destructive consumerism. Quote, "Truth-telling about pets to friends can be a painful process, but it is not something that we should shy away from," end quote. Now, CNN, not to be left out, said, "Our pets are part of the climate problem. These tips can help you minimise their carbon paw prints." They said, and I quote, "Our four-legged friends don't drive gas-guzzling SUVs or use energy-sucking appliances, but that doesn't mean they don't have a climate impact. Researchers have shown that pets play a significant role in the climate crisis." The article goes on to quote that 2017 study, which keeps popping up, and I quote, "Feeding dogs and cats creates the equivalent of around 64 million tonnes of carbon dioxide in the US each year. That's roughly the same impact as 13.6 million cars on the road. And if our furry friends formed a separate country, it would rank 5th in the global meat consumption behind China, the US, Brazil and Russia. Now this makes me wonder, why not run the maths on ants or crickets or any other random animal that we share this planet with? Citing statistics like this makes it appear as if our pets are uniquely carbon aggressive, in the same way that politicians recited COVID deaths in the absence of other deaths to accentuate the perceived danger of the pandemic. At least the CNN article didn't advocate for deleting pets. Instead, it wanted us to start feeding them insects. Quote, "Insect-based pet foods can be nutritionally complete and are starting to come onto the market around the world. They can also be a solution for some pets that have food allergies to traditional protein sources." And that was from the veterinarian for Vets for Climate Action. I'm trying to imagine breaking the dietary news to my kangaroo meat-loving puppy. I'm not sure that he would be thrilled. But by far the worst example of this eco-fascist kind of let's come after your pets narrative comes from The Guardian. Quote, "Can pets be a part of a sustainable future?" Now, The Guardian goes on to say, the short, if unpopular answer is probably not. 2 German shepherds use more resources just for their annual food needs than the average Bangladeshi uses each year in total. And while pet owners may disagree that Bangladeshis have more right to exist than their precious schnookums, the truth is that pets serve little more social purpose than keeping us company in an increasingly individualistic and socially isolated consumer society. Gosh, who hurt The Guardian? They almost went full North Korean with that misery-inducing rant. It effectively goes on to ask if we'd value the company of dogs if we had a different political society. And here is the really interesting quote. "Instead, many would argue that pets provide people with companionship, improve health, reduce stress, and even provide a reason to get out of the bed to meet people. But would this still hold true in a society where robust levels of societal capital existed? And more so, is the continued ownership of pets actually preventing the rebuilding of community ties? After all, why invest one's time and energy in opinionated people with differing views when one can instead spend time with a faithful dog that will enthusiastically amuse you anytime you want?" What a strange question from The Guardian. The article then ponders the options of the masses eating their pets, sterilising them to extinction, or taxing them to the point that only the rich can afford to have a puppy. Now, eventually, The Guardian goes full circle with Kim Jong-un, suggesting that people should only own pets that provide things like laying eggs, giving milk, or producing meat. Now, if ever there was evidence that the climate movement harboured shades of communist paranoia, we can see it in the way it speaks about our pets. So keep your furry little friends close, and the next time you think about voting for an eco-politician, consider that after they've taken away your car, they'll be coming for your pets to save the planet.